Well, Getty Images royal photographer Chris Jackson is here with me in the studio. Chris is the man behind that iconic image of the newly crowned King and Queen looking out over the balcony of Buckingham Palace as the red arrows flew overhead. Chris, thanks so much for being with us. The image is one of the standout, if not the standout, images of that day, of Coronation Day. Tell us about that moment.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me, firstly. It was, of course, for everyone who was in the vicinity of Buckingham Palace on the day. What an incredible day. I mean, despite the weather, the crowd certainly came out, and it was, an experience I will never forget, to be there in that kind of unseen position, that position that's never been shot before, behind the King and the Queen, with all those elements within the picture. Of course, the crowds, the QVM, the Queen Victoria Memorial, and, just to get the crowns and shooting through and getting all those elements in one shot. It was just very special to be there.
You presumably only had a very, very short period of time in which to get that image, because I did spy you pop up as they were standing on the balcony, and you ducked down, and that was it. And then this photograph was released. What was it like for you in that moment?
Well, of course, I was worried about my colleagues. We had some Getty Images photographers down on the QVM getting that, of course, those iconic pictures of the King and Queen waving to the crowds from the front. So, I was concerned. I didn't want to get in anyone's pictures. I knew that there was going to be an element of visibility when I sort of popped up for a few moments. So, and I had to get that angle, the higher perspective, to get the element of the crowds and the crowns and everything in one frame. So I tried to make it as brief as possible, but inevitably I had lots of messages from friends I haven't heard of for a very long time. I mean, if you want to hear from friends that you haven't heard of for a long time, pop up when millions of people are watching.
Balcony.
Exactly. But the great thing was, it was just so lovely, and it was so special to be, I suppose, quite literally. I often talk about having a front row seat to these historic moments. I mean, it couldn't really be more front row seat than that, I suppose. So that was very special. And, I think all the images we saw on the day, my image formed one part of an incredible set of historic images. And, that is a special thing about being a royal photographer, capturing these historic moments. We were, of course, looking back on some of the images from 1953, from Queen Elizabeth's coronation, and maybe people will be doing the same thing in many decades and years to come with these images. So it's so special to have played a small part in creating that set of images that tell the story of the day.
And as you described, it was an unseen moment before, because you will have spent many occasions standing at the Queen Victoria Memorial, looking up at the balcony to take those photographs of members of the royal family, whether it's been a jubilee or a royal wedding or trooping the colour, for example. But to stand behind the balcony and to see the view that they had and the crowds, did you get a chance to take that in?
Yeah, and quite often in these moments, when you say, did you get a chance to take it in, you are so caught up in the moment and the technicalities of trying to get the right shot. And of course, there's an element of nerves at high pressure moments like this. And I suppose when you're on the other side, when you're down on the QVM, and I've spent many years photographing trooping the colour and things like that, I'm totally familiar with the lenses I need, the technical requirements. So it's that unknown, I suppose, that makes you nervous. All you can do is prepare as much as possible, both technically, having the right camera equipment. But, there is an element of the unknown, and that also makes it exciting. I've spent 20 years photographing the King and Queen, and it's been a huge privilege to travel all around the world and document day-to-day royal engagements. So it did feel like the culmination of a lot of those moments, to see them crowned, something we've talked about for many years, but to experience that actual moment and be in the midst of it was very special.
Yeah, and in a very privileged position and very unique. How much did you have that image in your head beforehand? How much of a plan is there? Because these things don't always go to plan, and actually the fly past had to be scaled back because of the weather, hadn't it?
Yeah, well, there's an iconic picture of the Queen, actually, Queen Elizabeth, from a few years ago, where she's looking ahead and you can see the kind of fly past coming towards her. And I ultimately, that was a shot I envisaged in my mind, the red arrows coming down the mall and getting that shot with the crowns, because the crowns tell the story, so you don't need to see them from the front, so you can shoot through and get that shot. But of course, anything could have gone slightly differently. The lineup, the angles might not have worked. So it was a huge relief to get that shot, and the fact it's slightly more abstract is really lovely. So I enjoyed getting that, and that's from a sort of lower perspective. So there's two different images, I suppose, kind of, very much encompassing that behind the scenes moment, literally behind the crown.
So the two images, that the red arrows coming over, but also that wider image where you get to see the whole of the crowd and what it is that Charles and Camilla are looking at. And you have followed the now King and Queen for a long, long time, travelled the world with them. How do you think they will take on this next role, a new job in their 70s? How do you think they will conduct themselves now as King and Queen?
It's a good question. I think they've had the best training you could ever have in the job. Like I said, I've travelled around the world with them. I've incredible work ethic that they both have, and also a commitment to duty. I think it's something that the King has taken from Queen Elizabeth, who famously had this incredible commitment and sense of duty, and I certainly feel that has been passed on to both the King and the Queen. But what better training period could they have had than the period of time they have worked tirelessly as ambassadors for the UK around the world? So I think they're very well prepared for the role, taking it on an age where many people have retired. It's certainly, it's not to be undertaken lightly, I don't think, from what I see of the role. But, I think there are no two better people to take that on.
And the role of Camilla as Queen in supporting Charles, you've seen them up close. She plays a really key role behind the scenes as well, doesn't she?
Totally, absolutely. I think, they are an incredible team. Most couples don't work together as much as they do, and I think that is a secret to their success, is this incredible bond and ability they have to work together, on things like royal tours and day-to-day engagements in the UK. They both work well when they're on their own solo engagements, but it's great to see them working together. And it was actually lovely the other day to see the King supporting the Queen at her literary event at Clarence House. That sort of the roles slightly reversed in that moment, but again showing the support that she has shown him for many years. So it's certainly a symbiotic process, and I think they have shown how good they are.
They have a good shared sense of humour, don't they? They have a laugh, which is important.
I think a sense of humour is absolutely key to the whole role. Work ethic and a sense of humour, and just seeing the way they connect with people around the world across different cultures, society. It is amazing. Just being at the state visit in Hamburg recently, seeing the crowds that turned out outside the city hall and looking down on those many thousands of people, and seeing the King taking the time to meet both the King and the Queen, as many people as possible, and the excitement that it generated was just incredible. And really,
did you notice a shift actually there? Because in the level of interest in that tour, the first overseas visit they'd made since Charles ascended to the throne, compared to what you've experienced before?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't really think about it before, weirdly. I just assumed it was going to be a trip like any other, but from the minute I looked out the window of the RAF Voyager on and saw the Eurofighter escorting us into Berlin airport, I knew this was going to be different to what it was like before. It's a state visit of the King and Queen, so of course it was different. I have seen, big crowds all around the country since the King has taken on his new role, transitioning from Prince to King. So yeah, it's been really exciting to be a part of that, and I can only see it growing moving forward.
And what next? Because we talked about celebrating the jubilees. We've had royal weddings, we've had births, we've had the funerals, we've now had a coronation. What next? What are you looking forward to next?
Wow, well, there has been a lot. Well, I'm really looking forward to getting documenting them getting out and about. Hopefully, moving forward in the later part of the year, we'll see some royal tours. Of course, there's been less royal tours over the last couple of years because of the Queen passing away and COVID, etc., etc. So it's been, an unusual period of time. But moving forward, I'm pretty sure we're going to see some royal visits around the world, getting out and about. Queen Elizabeth said, "I have to be seen to be believed," and it's very much true of the King and the Queen. They like to get around and meet as many people as possible, whether it's in the UK or abroad. So fingers crossed we'll have some exciting trips coming up.
Chris, thank you.
Thanks for having me.